It had been a while since I'd seen my son so proud of anything. Arun had recently landed his first real job at a prestigious company, and I could see the shift in him. The boy who used to come home after work, slumped in exhaustion, now radiated confidence. He talked about his boss, Mr. Rajan, with the kind of respect that only someone fresh in their career could muster. Mr. Rajan was the epitome of success, with the kind of charm and authority that made everyone in the room listen. He had a knack for making everyone feel important, especially Arun. It was one evening, a few weeks into Arun's new role, that he invited me to a corporate dinner to celebrate his promotion. He was excited, practically bouncing around the house as he prepared. "Mom, this is a big deal," he had said, beaming. "Mr. Rajan is hosting. You'll love him." I smiled, proud of my son's progress, but part of me felt an unease I couldn't shake. Maybe it was just the world of business I didn't understand, or maybe it was the way Arun spoke about his boss. There was an awe in his voice, almost reverence. That evening, as we walked into the event hall, the atmosphere was polished and intimidating. Tall glass windows let in the city lights, and the hum of professional chatter filled the air. Mr. Rajan was a towering figure in the room, effortlessly commanding attention with his dark suit and easy smile. I was introduced to him by Arun, and his handshake was firm, his gaze direct. There was something unsettling in the way his eyes lingered on me just a moment too long, like he was studying me, not just greeting me. As the evening unfolded, I found myself caught in the web of conversation. Mr. Rajan was charming, the kind of man who made everyone feel as though they were the most important person in the room. He asked me about my life, my interests, things I hadn't talked about in years. I noticed Arun observing us, his smile wide but his eyes flickering between us, as though he was suddenly aware of the tension that had begun to form between Mr. Rajan and me. The night ended with laughter, handshakes, and the usual pleasantries. As everyone began to leave, Mr. Rajan approached me. "Mrs. Kapoor, I wonder if we could have a moment alone before you go?" he asked, his voice low enough for only me to hear. I hesitated, glancing at Arun, but he was busy talking to a colleague, completely unaware of the shift. "Of course," I said, my voice betraying nothing. We stepped to the side, the bustling crowd fading behind us. Mr. Rajan smiled in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "I've been meaning to talk to you, away from the crowd. You're different. Not like the others here." His words hung in the air, and something shifted inside me. It wasn't flattery. It was something else. Something darker. And in that moment, I realized I had walked into something I hadn't expected. As he leaned in just slightly, his gaze unwavering, I wondered if I had crossed a line I didn't even know was there. The invitation came a few days later, and it was as unexpected as it was unsettling. A message from Mr. Rajan. Mrs. Kapoor, I'd like to meet you for coffee. It's important. I promise I won't take up too much of your time. I stared at the words for longer than I should have. There was a tightness in my chest, a curiosity that I couldn't quite shake. I should have ignored it. I should have told him no. But something inside me, some unspoken need I didn't even fully understand, nudged me forward. Arun was busy with his work, as usual, his face glowing with the pride of a son making his way in the world. He never questioned when I told him I'd be meeting Mr. Rajan. He simply smiled and wished me well, not noticing the flicker of discomfort that lingered in my own expression. The cafe Mr. Rajan suggested was small and quiet, the kind of place that felt like it existed on its own, untouched by the outside world. I arrived first, sitting by the window, my fingers wrapped around a cup of tea I hadn't touched. The air smelled faintly of vanilla and coffee, but my thoughts kept drifting back to that moment at the dinner. The way Mr. Rajan had looked at me, how his gaze lingered like a question I wasn't sure I wanted answered. When he arrived, it was as though the air shifted. Mr. Rajan's presence was impossible to ignore, even in the intimate silence of the cafe. He smiled as he approached, but it wasn't the same easy smile from the party. This was something different, something loaded. "Mrs. Kapoor," he greeted, taking the seat across from me. "Thank you for meeting me." His voice was low, smooth, like a velvet thread weaving through the room. I nodded, unsure of what to say. "I wanted to speak with you privately," he began, his eyes holding mine, unwavering. "There's something about you. I can't quite explain it, but I feel like we connect on a deeper level." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. "Mr. Rajan, I'm not sure I understand what you mean." He leaned forward slightly, his smile never faltering, but his eyes darkened with a hint of something more intense. "I've spent years in this business, Mrs. Kapoor, and I've met many people. But you have a quiet strength, a calmness I don't often see. And I can't help but be drawn to it." My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't flattery, no, it was something more. Something dangerous. "I've been in a loveless marriage for a long time," he continued, his tone soft but laced with something heavy. "I've been searching for something real. And when I met you, I realized I might have found it." I tried to keep my voice steady. "I don't think you should say such things, Mr. Rajan. This isn't appropriate." But even as the words left my mouth, they sounded weak. Because part of me, deep down, wasn't sure I wanted to stop him. Part of me wanted to hear more. "I'm not asking for anything," he said, his voice lowering, his eyes never leaving mine. "I simply needed you to know how I felt. The rest is up to you." His words hung in the air like a challenge, but I couldn't bring myself to push him away. Instead, I sat there, a million thoughts racing through my mind, and I wondered how close I was to a decision I never thought I'd face. As I stood to leave, Mr. Rajan stood too, his hand brushing mine as he said, "You don't have to respond now. Just think about it." I left the cafe, my thoughts tangled, my heart unsettled. The question was no longer whether I was tempted, it was what I would do with that temptation. The days after my meeting with Mr. Rajan passed in a blur, the weight of his words pressing against me, harder each day. I tried to push the memory aside, focusing on my life, my son's excitement about his promotion, and the routine that had kept me grounded for years. But it wasn't that simple. Every time I saw Arun's face, so full of hope and pride, I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. I had nothing to tell him, no reason to cast a shadow on his bright future. And yet, every word Mr. Rajan had spoken to me played on a loop in my mind, a constant reminder of something I wasn't sure I should want. I told myself I would forget about it. It was just a conversation, a moment of weakness, something that could be brushed away. But the next message came 2 days later. "I hope you've been thinking about our conversation. I can't ignore the pull I feel towards you. I'd like to see you again, whenever you're ready." I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, unsure. What was I doing? Was this just a fleeting temptation, or had something shifted in me that I couldn't ignore? I didn't respond. But I didn't delete the message, either. That evening, as I sat alone in the living room, I felt a deep, unfamiliar yearning. I hadn't felt desired in so long, and the attention Mr. Rajan offered, it felt like a breath of fresh air, a taste of something I had forgotten existed. My marriage had become a series of empty conversations and distant silences. Arun had his own life now, his own future to chase. And I was left with the quiet echoes of a woman I didn't fully recognize anymore. The next time I saw Mr. Rajan was at a family dinner, one Arun had organized to celebrate his promotion. The entire evening had been a whirlwind of congratulations and laughter, but the moment Mr. Rajan arrived, everything seemed to pause. He walked in with that same magnetic presence, his eyes immediately finding mine, as though the world around us faded into the background. I watched him greet Arun with a warm handshake, his smile polite but something deeper lingering beneath it. His eyes met mine across the room, and I felt a jolt of something unfamiliar. There was no mistake. He knew what he had said to me. He knew I hadn't forgotten. As the dinner wore on, I found myself avoiding his gaze, keeping to the corner of the table where I could pretend none of this was happening. But I couldn't ignore the tension building between us, a silent acknowledgement that something had shifted. That something was happening. At one point, I caught Arun looking at us both, his expression a mix of curiosity and confusion. But I quickly looked away, not wanting him to sense the undercurrent that had formed between his boss and me. How could I explain it? How could I tell him that the admiration he held for Mr. Rajan was so different from the kind of attention I was receiving? That night, as I lay in bed, I felt like I was teetering on the edge of a precipice. The pull of temptation was stronger than ever, and yet the guilt weighed just as heavily. I wasn't sure if I wanted to fall or if I was fighting to stay on solid ground. But one thing was clear: I couldn't ignore what was happening between us. And soon, I would have to choose. The days after that dinner felt different, as if the very air I breathed had changed. I moved through life as though in a haze, a spectator to my own existence. Arun, blissfully unaware of the storm swirling just beneath the surface, continued to speak so highly of Mr. Rajan. He admired him, looked up to him, and spoke of the great opportunities the man had promised him in the future. But I couldn't stop thinking about how different my own thoughts had become. How everything seemed to come back to the man who had touched my life in a way I hadn't expected. I had spent the days following the dinner debating whether to speak to Arun, to tell him what had happened. But each time I looked at my son, his face glowing with excitement about his new role, I couldn't bring myself to ruin it. The weight of my silence felt heavier with each passing day. I couldn't hurt him. Not now. Not like this. Mr. Rajan's messages continued, growing more insistent. They were never aggressive, just carefully crafted words that seemed to worm their way into my thoughts. Asterisk, I'm waiting to hear from you. Asterisk, asterisk, you know where I am if you want to talk. Asterisk, and the one that made my heart ache most. Asterisk, I haven't been able to forget you. I won't give up on you. Asterisk. Each message left me shaken. I had become addicted to his attention, his words, his gaze. But with every new message came a surge of guilt for my son, for the life I had built, for the secret I was hiding. What would happen if I told Arun? How would he look at me then? And then, the message came that changed everything. Asterisk, I understand if you can't respond, Mrs. Kapoor. But I need you to know, I'll always be here. And I'll always care about you. Asterisk, I didn't respond. I simply stared at the screen, the weight of his words sinking deeper into me. Arun received the big promotion, the one he'd been working toward, and the first thing he did was come home and tell me, his voice bright and proud. Mom, I couldn't have done it without Mr. Rajan. He's been such a huge help, a real mentor to me. He said I'm ready for anything now. Can you believe it? I forced a smile, nodding along, but inside, I felt like a stranger in my own life. Mr. Rajan's shadow loomed over everything now, even as I watched Arun bask in the success Mr. Rajan had helped him achieve. The reality was clear. I was stuck, trapped between my own desires and the life I had built for my son. That night, after Arun had gone to bed, I stood in front of the mirror, my reflection staring back at me as if it belonged to someone else. The woman I had been was no longer here. And the woman I was becoming, I didn't know her at all. But one thing was certain: I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. I deleted the messages from Mr. Rajan, finally severing the last thread that connected us. But the decision didn't feel like relief. It felt like the beginning of something else, a painful realization that some choices can never be undone, and the consequences will echo far longer than any fleeting moment of temptation.